It's so great to be interviewed by you. Can't say that I'm not a little terrified, but it's great to have an interview with you. And I think before we get kick started, if you could just maybe intro yourself, maybe to the audience, a bit, so that they can just get to know who Michelle is.
Well, firstly, Roxy, why are you terrified? You're amazing. I don't know how you could possibly. You're just going to be yourself, and it's going to be so cool. I'm here really, I think, because of 10 million masks, and 10 million masks is a citizen movement for change, which aimed to inspire South Africans to make masks. And so it started, but we'll discuss more about that later, I think, Roxy.
I was very captivated by the concept and by the movement, and I think also that probably that you had really good foresight because you started it quite early, when COVID-19 started, whereas there was a lag with some of the people who were starting the initiatives.
Yeah, those were the crazy days when we first met, when we were getting 353 WhatsApp messages every 10 minutes because we were all scrambling around trying to save the world. Remember that, Roxy?
Yep, I remember those days.
Yeah, I think we were remarkably privileged here in South Africa in that we had an opportunity to see how things would play out earlier than in other places.
Absolutely.
And we learned from those lessons. And I think this is what's made me so proud to be South African, is that for the first time, we're really sitting back and saying, you're not coming to us with a solution. We're actually coming to the rest of the world with a solution. My Pan-African pride comes to the fore. And I think that's very much what the president's pen pal is about, isn't it? Capturing that essence of how...
Yeah, absolutely. It was, yesterday the journalist asked me, why did I start writing it? And I said to him, I didn't start writing it intentionally. And that's sometimes the beauty of most things, is that you don't necessarily start out with it having a specific intent. You know that you just want to do good. And for me, just knowing you want to do good is probably the best starting point of anything.
And yet within that, we feel this terrible need to be responsible in the good that we're doing, especially when we're doing good in a medical emergency. And I think that's why for me in particular, the decision to make masks wasn't taken lightly. We researched it properly. We made sure that we'd read the literature for and against. I think in the same way, you must be caught up with these oppositional feelings where you're being torn one way or another, because opinions aren't always aligned. Even when it's something as simple as saying thank you to our president for doing an amazing job. They're the haters. They're there. They're talking in your ear, aren't they? How do you keep them at bay?
Absolutely.
So what is your superpower to stop
I thought, my mom was chatting to me about it, and she says, how do you not want to respond to all of these people telling you she must be deaf, blind and deaf, she must be sniffing glue. I've had comments, such like hateful comments, and I've just said to her, somewhat like the president, when things don't go his way, when he stood up there and he didn't put his mask on properly, or this weekend when he got he was running and he got caught by a journalist and he was embracing the crowd that had come to him and he was under fire for social distancing. He always turns it into a positive, and he doesn't let it distract him from his vision or from his goal. And for me, I think I'm the same in that way. I don't really let the negative comment take me away from what I'm trying to do for the broader South Africa, which is to create positive sentiment for a person who is really trying to guide us through something so massive. I would hate to be in his position and be broken down every single day by the people that I'm serving, you know? So, so yeah, I do it for that, and I try to keep away from the negative sentiments, even though that I know it's gonna come. I don't let it distract me.
I think that's true. I mean, that's you choose who you let into your life, and you choose what energies you prepared to allow around you. But by writing these letters, you've made yourself you've put yourself out there into the public with a particular position. So you're vulnerable.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that that I've put myself out there and into a particular position. And what's been very interesting about this, and like hindsight is the best side, they always say. Um, People some immediately think that because I'm embracing the president, that I'm, by virtue of that fact, embracing a particular um, political party, and or that I'm maybe a wealthier person, or that I don't know the realities of South Africa. And that, I think, has been hard to swallow a bit, because I'm not politically aligned. Some people have even said to me, "This is an advert. This is a paid for advert that is written." And I was so shocked, because but that's a thought that goes through people's mind. And in no way is it um, a paid for advert. I wish I had that I was that well connected with the president. I'm unfortunately not. So the world knows. Um, so it's not any of that. And sometimes people can take your completely out of context, take your message completely out of context. Which for me, I want the world to know it's not about politics, it's not about anything. This is about survival, and it's about us surviving a pandemic. It's got nothing to do with which political party our president is from. It's about the man who's leading us.
Is it about the birthing of a new world order? About if we come through this with the right kind of gentle nudging from people like yourself, who are seeing kindness and compassion as the only legitimate option, the only way that we can navigate these new waters. I know for myself, that was what 10 million masks was about. It was about saying, we can do this differently. And if I see how it's evolved, I mean, 10 million masks has now become a not-for-profit social enterprise, which aims to have people in the community making and selling masks as a way of sustaining livelihoods. You spoke earlier, you said you had no idea, your intention wasn't clear in your head. You just sort of, you were moved to say, I must do this, but why, you didn't know. I think that's the same feeling that I've had, this feeling of, shoo, I don't know what's guiding me, but I just believe, I have this conviction that it must be the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And your gut feeling sometimes is just, and I think if you've always been a charitable person, you're lucky enough to know that, you're going to try whatever possible way to give back. And if that turns out to be something magical and big, like 10 million masks has worked out to be, then great. But when you're used to doing charity, your intent is just, I want to help someone. It's never that I want to help the world. You always start out saying, I want to help someone. And, that evolves.
I think that's exactly it. Sometimes it feels like the world's problems are just too big for you to tackle, and you don't know where to start, and you feel isolated and alone, and you have this sense of overwhelming being paralyzed, and just having something as simple as getting up in the morning, cutting out a piece of material, sewing it together, and knowing it's going somewhere is therapy. There's therapy in action. And I suppose even in the way processing your thoughts and writing a letter to the president, not a letter, a very short, pithy comment, because I think We've been inundated with these long, whingy, open letters, which are nothing more than just moan pieces. And yours isn't. It's so pithy that the short form is very powerful. Was that, again, intentional, or is that just the way it came out?
Yeah, I think it's a way it came out. I have chosen to keep it short because I tend to know that short messages are gonna be read, and I do want the messages to be read because, you know, I was saying yesterday that if you are a leader and you have 58 million people who are speaking negative about what you're doing, and you have to spend 90% of your time dealing with the negative comments and addressing the nation about what you're doing wrong, how much time are you allowing the president to do a good job of letting him help us survive this crisis, because he is our leader? And for me, I chose the short form because I wanted more people to read it, because I thought it was so important for people to understand he needs our support in order to make better decisions. And he needs our support so that he's not distracted by, he's not distracted by things, by comments or by politics, that he's focused on his goal, which is to help as many South Africans survive this as possible. So for me, the short message is critical because, yeah, people don't take the time to read things anymore.
It's also written in a beautiful, informal, straight from the heart kind of way you'd never expect to address a president.
Yeah.
But there's something quite disarming about that. You write into a friend.
Yeah, I started my second letter, I called him my pen pal. And in the third letter, I said to him, we're no longer pen pals. I think we're now comfortably friends. And so ever since then, by the fifth letter, he still called my friend, and a friend that he doesn't know about, unfortunately. But he's a friend to me, and I always just feel, I said that when I write the letters, it feels like I'm having a personal conversation with him. And yeah, he's very much he's earned my friendship, and that's what I can say. He's definitely earned my friendship. And I think that's important, is that we see our president not as a political figure, not as a man who lives in luxury, which is what a lot of people say. He lives in a luxurious house and he doesn't understand. He does understand and he does know. And the reality is that in South Africa, like in any business, if you had to speak to a marketer, they would tell you they want to do 1 million TV ads, they want to do print ads, they want to do all of these fancy things. But like all things in life, there's a budget. And I think we have to respect our president for understanding that he himself has a budget and that he's trying to best utilize that. So people get angry about this lockdown and that it's so long and people are losing their jobs. And they say it's so like a blanket statement as though they're the only ones being impacted. But the reality is we are all being impacted, whether it's emotionally, whether it's financially, whatever it is. There's not a single South African that hasn't been impacted by COVID-19. And for me, it's really important that people understand that no one's problem is bigger than the other. We have different problems. And the president is trying his best to address all of those problems within the means that he has. And for me, he's earned my friendship for that reason.
You speak of everyone being impacted. I think that's completely true. But for many of us, that impact has been positive, not negative. It's been an evolution. It's been an opportunity for the first time to do something you never would have imagined, an opportunity to make friends you never thought you had, to reach across distance and discover that people are not that different. Underneath the skin, we actually all are made of kindness. And then others have chosen to self-isolate, to remove themselves from society and be wrapped in anger and frustration. But and I say that I suppose I am sounding a bit judgy when I say that, because that wasn't my part. maybe it's not, maybe I was privileged enough for it not to be my path, but I think this has impacted so many of us, and for many of us in an incredibly beneficial way, as opposed to in a negative way. They are the amazing
Absolutely.
people
And
that
I
I've
think
met.
it's how you view the world.
I would have never met you if it wasn't for COVID. And I'm so blessed that our paths have crossed.
Absolutely.
And I think it's become
Absolutely. You know,
a whole lot of people who were doing good works, but in isolated pockets that never really got a chance to meet. And ironically, in our isolation, we came together because geographical distance
yeah,
became
that's so
irrelevant.
beautiful.
But
That is so true.
and I see it in the sewing circles. I see how people who thought they were completely different, who might be from different races, different religions, even different classes, are kind of creating this common sense of meaning and purpose and real community. And I've been thinking a lot about what does community really mean, like on a fundamental level, because we speak in abstract about, oh, the community. You know, what is it? Is it a family?
Yes,
Is it your street? Is it your neighbors?
the
Is it,
neighborhood. Yeah.
what is it do you only have communities in townships? Do you only have communities in suburbs? I mean, to commune means to come together. And I think that's almost COVID has become a space of communing, of forming new communities, of like universal community. And I'm kind of very inspired by this, by the way that it's helped us
I
tear
love
down old perceptions and build new ones. And for some, just through making a mask. And every mask we've made tells a story. Tells a story of the love and the intent and the beauty that's gone into the making of the transporting of the joy that's and being in that receiving. And I think for me, and I think the
I think,
same
yeah,
is
there's a beauty in the making and the receiving of it. There's a story on both sides, the person making it and the person receiving it.
and I must say I'm more in tune with the story of the makers because I see their story unfold. I'm not in tune with the recipients as much, but the makers are actually the biggest receivers. They're receiving joy, connectivity, purpose, friendships. By giving, you open yourself up to get. It's like you see their cups are filling up. They're exhausted in other levels, but and many of them have sent me messages saying, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have got through this time. I've deeply connected to people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is that is, I think, rewarding. I mean, I think this whole thing has been difficult for all of us. I think we've been raw
Absolutely.
raw to the surface. We're having incredibly difficult conversations amongst ourselves about what it means to be South African, about national pride, about guilt, privilege, shame, whiteness, blackness. And I think it's because we're in almost a false state, a state of containment.
Mm.
I don't know. What do you think? Are you having those conversations?
Yeah, look, I mean, so Amish, we also outside of um, the letters that I spend a lot of my time on whenever he speaks, before lockdown, my cousin and I actually decided because we saw what was happening around the world, and we were lucky. I don't think clever enough. I just say lucky because I don't think we were that smart, but we were lucky enough to have thought, we're going to go into this period of lockdown, and we personally know what friendships and meeting our family means to us. And if that gets taken away, we knew that it would be something that would leave a massive hole in our lives. And we decided to start an Instagram page called COVID Connect. And on that platform, we've now got, I think, 500, just over 500 followers. And there's people from all over the world, from Dubai to UK to New York, South Africa, Mozambique. And every single day we host a live chat and we talk about just different things, all the way from how people are feeling at this point in time, to just doing fitness with them, to doing um, some fun family karaoke for charity. So every day we do something different. And you're so right, because we've almost formed this little community now on that platform where we've got these constant viewers who come on, but it's always been constructive. We've had psychologists come on as guest speakers. We've had celebrities come on. We've had entrepreneurs come on, and it's inspired people to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily think about doing outside of the virus. Some people wouldn't think about getting fit, and some people wouldn't think about doing a personality test or doing family karaoke. And for me, um, we're definitely having those conversations every day, and seeing what the world is feeling when we connect in the afternoons. And for me, that's very special that in this time, we're such a resilient bunch of people, as South Africans, and I think around the world, that we find a way to still connect even without physical contact.
In a way, I think we're even connecting deeper because we're setting
Absolutely.
us, and that's hard. It's raw and it's uncomfortable, I think, in many ways. I mean, there's an amazing supportiveness that's coming through, and this overshadowing of just mutual support. But somehow, I don't know how it is. Well, maybe it's just me, but I keep sitting back and thinking, why? It's so obvious. So there's structural inequalities in society. There is this sense of this massive divide between those who have and those who don't. And what
Absolutely.
is that? And is that the way it should be? And what can I do to do my very best to make sure that isn't perpetuated? How can we find a fairer economic model which isn't built on exploitation? What is it? How do we do
Yeah, and
that?
I think I like what you said though. Like, you used the words, how can I change that? And for me, being a South African, I think I sometimes take my responsibility equal to that of our government, because, to mobilize everyone and 58 million people, of which a large portion of people are unemployed. I mean, it's what, 28% now. um, you have to think about, I like the what can I do? Because it really is about that for me in South Africa. We can't sit back and expect a change. We need to make the change. And I always say to people, people tend to have a view that you need to be wealthy, or you need to be, somebody influential to make a change. I mean, there's probably very few people in the world who know me, but I feel like I make the biggest change in my little world because I chose to do it, versus some of the people who I see in some of my friendship circles who actually don't do it at all. So for me, it does start with I. It's not, they always say, you're always pointing the gun in the opposite direction. You need to point it back at yourself. And um, I always believe that you can help somebody no matter how little or how much you have, and you can always start a movement. And for me, that's the biggest mentality shift that I would like to see in people, rather than necessarily complaining, is to say, to start acting. Like, we need to all start acting. We can't keep complaining and saying, I wish I saw this and I wish somebody would make 10 million masks. You got up one day and you decided to do that. You didn't
I
know
think
what it would become. But you got up and you did it.
one of the biggest dangers we all we run the risk of getting into, is we want to help, but sometimes there's the desire to help might be dependent on keeping somebody else in servitude. So this is what you have to break, is this myth of helping because you want to feel good about, no, I don't know how to say this properly, but there's nothing that, it's this idea of, I'm the great benefactor, I'm your patron, this is my patronage, and you must be grateful for it. Now be a good serf, be a good peasant, and behave.
Mm-hmm.
That for me is just a state of perpetual dependency. And many old NGOs still operate in that model. It's kind of, I am coming with all these skills, now you just do it my way. We have to break that.
Yeah,
It
you're
has
right.
to be, it's, you're an equal to me. You are a person of talent. No, I'm not saying you, I'm talking, anybody is equal. We all have
Yes.
talents. We all have capabilities. All you might not have had is access. You might not have had access to the same networks or the same resources. And that's what I'm finding. I'm coming across these people doing amazing stuff, but there's one guy who's running out of food. He didn't have food. He couldn't feed his dogs. Had to give them away. Sent me a message saying it would be great to have food. I sent out a message to my network. Within 4 minutes, I had 14 different organizations he could turn to for food. He's just not connected at that
that's so powerful though. Because that's so powerful because, you know, you use your network to do good. And that's what I say, you know, and a network doesn't have to be, again, Mish, it doesn't have to be like, you know, the most important people. It could be 5 neighbors, you know, and you and your 5 neighbors see somebody who doesn't have something, and you're able to together able to help somebody. So we've all got networks. It's just different types of networks that we can call on to help. And that's for me important that South Africans understand that, you know. I really do hear people when they say, you know, people always, when I've written these letters, they've said to me, you know, you obviously come from a place of privilege. And you know, so much of me wanted to turn around and defend myself and almost give them my income statement of my monthly expenses to say that majority of my money actually doesn't come to me. It goes towards charity. And if you bother to do any research, you'd actually know that about me. Um, but you know, I also at the same in the same token, I don't feel the need to ever defend myself. And then that's something I want South Africans to also know, because that's how I feel about the president. You know, he's doing the best he can, and there's going to be days where he actually just chooses not to defend every decision he makes because he knows that he's doing good and that he is making the best decisions. And for me, that's important. Is you've got to step away from, if you're looking for recognition for what you're doing, that's probably the worst thing that's the wrong starting point. You shouldn't even be trying to do something good. But if you're coming from a place of true intent, you'll never find the need to defend yourself.
I often think, ironically, those without material means, like people who don't have a lot of money, and I'm not saying this about you because I don't know your financial situation at all, but kindness and generosity are often directly proportionate, inversely proportionate to income. Rich people are mean. They're often the meanest of the mean, I think. And that's, well, and I don't understand. I mean, super wealthy can afford to be generous because it doesn't hurt. It's when you're stuck in the middle and you've got these huge responsibilities and your lifestyle has got to the point where you actually, you know, like when you're a student, baked beans are kind of okay. Now you're you know, I mean, now you're middle-aged, like you kind of, well, so if it's not, I say foie gras, but I'm a vegan, so that could never be the case. But if, you know, if it's not something super fancy to eat, I'm not up for it. And I don't know how that happens, how our level of what is acceptable from a material consumption perspective just keeps rising and rising and rising until before you know it, you're drowning in stuff you don't need. And maybe that's also part of this.
Absolutely.
This coming of real.
Yeah, I mean,
I love beautiful things, and I have very expensive tastes. And I don't feel one should be ashamed or embarrassed about that either. You know?
Yeah, you're 100% right, because you've worked hard also equally for what you've achieved.
Yes. So we're all full of contradictions. We're kind of like, we know we should do good. Well, we do. And I think by being who you are and doing what you do, you are inherently doing good. And that's all you can do for all of us.
Absolutely. For every single person, I think that's so important. And yeah, I think it's so important to just, for me, like, I mean, on our COVID Connect channel, which is completely off topic from the letters, but um, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Elon Musk $1 a day challenge that he once did in his life. Um, so I did it for a month, and I tested myself to new levels of not wasting money on things and appreciating a block of chocolate 10 times more than I ever would in my life before. And on our COVID Connect channel, we actually encourage people to put themselves on a financial challenge of whether that was 1,000 Rand a week or whatever it is, and something far less than they would normally spend, and see what if they could make ends meet. And I mean, I was saying to my mom, I got to my last 3 days of the challenge and I had like 60 Rand, and the 60 Rand was the decision between petrol and like, what do I eat? And for me, this is such a time, you know, we all experiencing like salary cuts, job cuts, whatever it is. And for me, it's the prime time to put yourself through that test to actually see, you know what, can I actually live in a different way? And have I just been overindulging? Because sometimes we need that little bit of a kick to question ourselves.
I think there's also a move to more sustainable, gentler life. I see walking through my community, I saw families playing with the parents at 9 o'clock, or 8:30 in the morning with their children in the park. You'd never get that any other day. And I think this is a gentler kind of way. I mean, our vegetable garden is growing because I have time at home so I can potter in it. And I think that's just, I would be very resentful. I've worked from home for so long that it's not that different for me. But I think this kind of blending of work and personal in a way that's, yes, there are fewer boundaries because it's in one space, but that's not not necessarily a bad thing. I think for parents.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's brought upon so many benefits that people do get to spend more time at home, which is the one thing that we've all complained about prior to lockdown. I don't get enough time with my kids. I don't get enough time at home. And you're right. I think the blendedness is actually has actually given us so many benefits that we just kind of push to the side and we're not grateful for.
And I think a lot of people have saved a lot of money from all those partying nights that they. No, I mean, well, I also look at the flow of money through a community and who's winning and who's losing and where is the money going that's not going. And I know a lot of people are suffering, but I also know that there are a lot of organizations that are making a lot of money, far more money than they would under normal circumstances. And it almost feels like, it's a terrible analogy, but at the end of the war in Nazi Germany, there were companies that came out of there very wealthy. And now we look at those with a sense of moral repugnance. And this will be the case here too. There will be companies that will come out of COVID having made a complete fortune.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And there's also going to be the overnight millionaires. I think people have latched onto that concept as well, of making money in the short term. And there's going to be the overnight millionaires that come about as well.
I suppose so long as those are millionaires with a conscience and they share fairly, that's great. But I mean, if they're yeah, I don't know. I think money is really a difficult thing. I mean, money should just be an energy that flows through a community, but it doesn't. It gets dammed up. And as it gets dammed up
It
and as
does
it gets
get dammed up.
hoarded, it creates all kinds of inequalities, which is a problem.
Absolutely. And I think it's just that people have to on their own realize that if you are one of the people where there is extra money, you need to see it that way and see yourself as a conduit for helping someone else. And for me, I always think that it's life's such a journey in that way. And I was saying to the people on our COVID Connect yesterday, because they were also asking, people's opinions about your letters have been so harsh at times, because they feel this inequality. And, for me, I've come to a place where I've learned the difference between values and beliefs. And I know that opinions are based on beliefs that we have. And sometimes those beliefs are formed on things we see, not necessarily things we're experiencing ourselves. And I was just saying to the journalist yesterday, for me, the biggest thing that I would want people to come out of in this time or to take away from the letters is I've in a way tried to humanize the president. I've tried to take away his title from him, and which is why I address him as a friend or a pen pal, because I'm trying so hard to humanize him, to say that, don't judge a person who's just a person. None of us are perfect. We all have imperfections. And, to be so opinionated implies that you are egotistical enough to think that you are perfect or that you could have done this better. And for me, it's so important that when we come out of COVID-19, that we come out as a less judgmental society and a more I want to help society. Because, we can all sit on our high, sit up there and judge everything that every other person is doing. But how often do we look inside and judge ourselves and say, am I perfect? Am I doing a perfect job in every aspect of my life? And for me, it's so important to humanize the president, because more now than ever, he's gonna make mistakes, because this is uncharted waters for the whole world. And I mean, there's presidents all over the world making mistakes. And, you can be grateful if you're in a country that's making less mistakes. But the reality is, presidents around the world are going to make mistakes because this is new to them. They have never experienced anything like this in their history. And to expect perfectionism, for me, is such a wrong way of looking at life in COVID and outside of COVID. I should never look at Michelle and expect her to be perfect. I should look at her and say, she's contributing all of these great things, and she perhaps has these flaws, and maybe I should highlight it to her or try to help her rather than pass judgment on her. And that for me is something I'm so passionate about, that we need to learn how to just be less judgmental and stop expecting perfect.
Judgment is something that we've been discussing here at home a lot, because it's a word that keeps coming up, like, why are you being so judgy? And I think the desire to judge comes out of a sense of one's own insecurities. I think one's on one level, you're judging because you're saying, I'm like you or I'm not like you. Judgment is a form of, on a gentler level, judging is relating. Judging is evaluating. Judging is saying, these are our affinities, on a very gentle level. And I think it's actually almost a natural thing to look for points of connection. But it becomes unuseful, or it becomes problematic, judgment, when it becomes a point of disconnection, and when it becomes a power dynamic, when it's judgment in terms of saying, I'm right and you're wrong. And judgment is always necessary to say, I agree or I don't agree. But that doesn't mean I'm right and you're wrong. It just means I agree or I don't agree.
Correct.
So we need tolerance.
Absolutely.
We need a plurality in our society. I mean, we come from so many different perspectives, so many different contexts. And I think that's often where we miss each other, because we come with an inbuilt set of cultural associations or personal associations which are based on prior who we've been and how we come to each other. And they just miss. But thinking about the way that you've turned the president into a human, you've turned him into a hero, I can't think of another president in the world that you'd be able to do this to. He's remarkable in that. Can you imagine someone doing that to Trump?
No, exactly. I mean, I'm just yesterday, the day before, there was another organization who said, the headline was the US being criticized, South Africa being praised. And, for me, I always feel that when someone is being placed in a position of leadership in a tough time, and it goes for me, even with my own personal leaders, I always choose to build them up rather than break them down. And I think, we have every right to evaluate and question some of the decisions that he makes. And that is 100% the correct thing. But to only say bad things and only see the bad things is not good either, because if he's getting credit from the rest of the world, for me, there's definitely things he's done right that he deserves credit for. And in this time, I would want to give him the credit, because you can't imagine that one of the poorest countries in the world could have a leader that is standing out from so many countries. I mean, he has to be doing something right.
Well, I think it's that sense of empathy and assuming positive intent. Yes, he's humble. That within the humility that he's come forward and said, "I'm doing my best. I've made mistakes." That once you've said that, what can you do? You can't. That takes the wind out of your sails as an attacker. I mean, because then to turn around and say, "Yes, you got it wrong," is a little bit mean-spirited and mean-minded. So it's a very clever strategy, quite frankly.
It is. And I mean, I even wrote that in one of my letters. I said, a lot of people out there, I said to him, as your friend, I'm letting you know that out there people are saying you admitted to your mistakes, but they don't see you taking any action. So, we still kind of find a way to still bring the negative in.
Yeah, I think it's a case of then looking back and saying, what is the hidden agenda of the person who's doing the negative commenting? What is their worldview? What is driving that perspective? And sometimes we assume negative intent. We assume, oh, they're doing this because they just want to pull him down. Or they're doing this because they just want to drag him down. But sometimes I actually think they genuinely, with every single little courage of their convictions, believe that their position is correct. And that's
so true.
And that's when it becomes dangerous, when dogma takes over from logic. But that said, on our journey, on our crazy 2 million masks journey of moments of complete madness, there have been at least 3 pivotal times when I have sat back and thought, yes, no, I was wrong. And you make the best decision you can at a time based on the facts that you have at your disposal then. But what COVID has taught me is that science is just a bunch of opinions dressed up as fact, and they change on a second-by-second basis. So viva the creative revolution, viva, because if anyone is going to solve this, it's creative people who can think laterally, who can apply their minds to a position that is not based on kind of like this very rigid scientific method, because they're new problems that have to be solved in a different and new and exciting way. And with kindness.
And I think it's probably, you're right in saying creative, because I think the creatives or some people are so realistic that they understand that there might be an end to this. There might not be an end to this. This might be the new way of living. Who knows when we're going to find the cure? And so you're so right in saying it's the creators, because the creators are the ones who are going to say, so how do we navigate this? What can we do? You know, thinking about a million, 10 million masks, I'm not waiting for the vaccine. I'm not waiting for that end thing. I'm going to find a way of creatively dealing with it now. So I think you're so spot on with that, because it's the mindset of, a lot of people look for the end of the tunnel. They wait for that. And sometimes it, it may never come. And that's the reality at this point in time. No one knows whether it will come. So I think you're 100% right, is you have to reimagine the world, and only creatives are able to do that.
We're used to the uncertainty and the uncomfortability of kind of surfing chaos daily because,
Yeah,
oh, well, and also of that kind of putting yourself out there each time you come up with an idea or each time you come up with something that is new, which is what creatives do. You're making yourself vulnerable, and you're giving. You're giving. I suppose maybe it's not only creators, maybe not all kinds of knowledge workers do it, or in fact, maybe everyone does it. But I think what this has also forced me to do is reassess kind of where does value start, like value in terms of a process as opposed to values in terms of beliefs. But like where in this whole maker network that we've got, where does the magic start? Is it the person who sat down and cut? Is it the person who stitched it together? Is it the person who collected? Or is it everybody collectively has a little sprinkle dust of magic? And then we've had to build an
yeah,
entire logistical network to support 2,000 people overnight. How do you do that? How do you do that? You do that through chaos and anarchy and creativity. That's why I say it's kind of,
absolutely.
it's been exciting.
Yeah, I think it's a you better trying than having not at all. I definitely have that belief. I'd rather try than not at all. And I'm gonna accept that I'm gonna make a muck at some point or the other along the way, but ultimately it will work itself out. And I think if you've got that mentality, you probably far ahead.
I saw a beautiful T-shirt or cup or something which said, I'm a recovering perfectionist and an aspiring good enoughist." Because I think for many of us,
I
especially,
love that.
that we put ourselves under such terrible pressure, especially as women. I think well, maybe it is across all genders, but you always feel you're not a good enough mother, you're not a good enough partner, you're not good enough in your career, you're not skinny enough, you're not well turned out enough, your makeup isn't good enough, your shoes aren't good enough, whatever it might be. I mean, you might be confident in one area of your life, but I haven't gone to yoga enough, I haven't eaten the right meal, I haven't. Why do we push ourselves so hard?
Yeah, I must say, I mean, I always, on our COVID Connect channel, I always say to people, I'm so comfortable with myself. If I didn't run today and I plan to run, I'm okay with that. I don't beat myself up about it. If I plan to, um, go visit my kids at the orphanage and I didn't go, I don't beat myself up, because um, I always believe that if you structure your life, that it is to do good things all the time, whether it's for yourself, for your own soul, or for those around you. Um, Even if things don't go according to plan on a day, I'm still ultimately going to be ending up on that day having done something good. So, for me, the setup of your life and your mentality is so important, that no matter when you have those moments of, oh my goodness, I cheated on my diet, you're still able to kind of, I don't know what to say, like just, you appreciate all the other good things that you managed to do. So I believe in structuring your life like that. And I got that from a guru that I was listening to. And he says, you know, um, he always sees people rushing to meetings or rushing to appointments, and they get so frantic when they don't make those appointments. And he says, but why? Why are you planning your life like this? And why do you have to? I have to be here. And that lesson was so valuable to me that if I miss an appointment, I'm okay with it. I literally just say to myself, like, there was probably a reason why I didn't go. And I've become so okay with it because of that very valuable lesson that, we can't build our lives around everything that we want to happen. You have to live in the present and accept it for what it is sometimes.
Until you have to put those jeans on and they just won't zip up. Then
Absolutely.
you're kind of like, maybe one less donut would have been good. No, I think you're 100% right. I mean, that was a joke, but I think you're 100% right that we must stop stuffing our days full of so much, because then we lose our clarity in the clutter. And our lives would.
Absolutely.
I think that's also what's been kind of valuable here, is that there has been space for reflection, for very deep reflection, for saying, well, why, what? Yeah, and it's been so rewarding on so many levels.
And Mish, before we end our chat, for me, I wanted to ask you, I've written, and I've been asking anyone who I interview with, I written a letter to the president, but I've asked the person interviewing me if they had to not necessarily write a letter to South Africans right now, just based on what you've experienced over lockdown. What would you say to South Africans as your little letter over this time, and as they experience this chaotic time? What would you say to South Africa if you had an opportunity to address all 58 million of them?
Thanks for the opportunity to prep this. Okay, so off the top of my head, what would I say? I would say be proud, be grateful that you could be living in this present moment, surrounded in this cornucopia of kindness and generosity and positive intent. I think we have done phenomenal things in a very complicated and complex space. We have changed the story that Africa is the basket case of the world. We are showing the rest of the world our ingenuity, our resilience, our courage, the fact that we can take scraps that other people throw away and make miracles out of them. I have never been prouder to be a South African, and so should you. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think I wanted to hear that kind of message. And I think what you said is so true. We can all be proud. And I don't think it's one person who can be proud. All South Africans out there can be so proud of themselves, whether it's that they survived, just the month on the means that they had, or survived without 2 months of cigarettes or alcohol. In each of our own spheres, we have something to be proud about. So I 100% agree with your message. We have so much to be proud about.
I suppose that the corollary to that would be, if you're not proud to be South African, do you belong here?
Yeah, I mean, the journalist and I spoke about that yesterday. I said, would you, if you were given the choice to live in America today or to live in South Africa, which one would you choose? And I mean, even without America going in the direction that it's going, with some of the decisions being taken, I would still choose to stay in South Africa. But right now, I would ask that question to many people: where would you rather be? And if that answer is South Africa, that should answer your question that we are doing our best, and that we are doing better than actually the biggest economy in the world. And that is something to be so proud of. If your answer is still South Africa, that you would rather be in South Africa during COVID-19, well, then you should that's in itself should answer all of your questions about your leadership, about the leadership who's guiding you right now.
100%. Also think, I mean, if you're saying you're proud to be South African, that means that you are deeply embedded in this country and invested in it. Then you have to ask yourself, what are you doing to make it better? It's that simple. And if you're not doing anything to make it better and you're not proud, well, maybe this isn't the place for you. Then pack for Perth.
Yeah, I believe in that. Like, I believe in, you've got to make the change you want to see. I still firmly believe in that. The vision of this country is not going to be created by a president. It's going to be built by the South Africans who live in it. And that is my firm view. And if every single person sitting out there can say they've genuinely given their best to create that South Africa that they envision, then you can be comfortable. But if you cannot answer that question without a little bit of doubt, then you need to reevaluate. Do I want to contribute to the society to make it a better one, or do I want to go and try and find a better society that exists somewhere else in the world? And for me, I think, and for you as well, as such a patriot, I want to live in this country and I want to make it better. So I want to act, and I hope that most South Africans would have that answer as well.
I must say again, I mean, just in wrapping up, the beauty and the privilege that I've had in this program is coming across so many South Africans who are doing just that. They're doing whatever they can in whatever means to make the world a little bit better. And even if it is just something as simple as at 7 o'clock, banging on your pot or blowing your vuvuzela, it's just one small act. And we're doing it. Yeah. Okay, Roxy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mish. Thank you so much for that. It was such a great chat, and I'm glad it was quite a chat and, not very formal interview. It was so nice to get perspective, and I think a lot of people will be inspired by what you're doing, and also just some of the little nuggets of, positivity, and how you view lockdown and COVID-19 as an opportunity to become better people, to do things better, and to do things you may never have thought about doing ever before this. So I think that's such a beautiful message. So thank you for sharing that.
Only a pleasure. Thank you. I'm really grateful to be on here and carry on writing those letters to the president. They need to be published into a book. And I can't wait for when he writes back.
I know.
Soon.
Everyone is, every interview that I close or every conversation that I close, somebody always says to me, so when is the book coming out? So I actually, oddly enough, started the process last week to find a publisher and to do it. I wasn't ever planning to, but now this thought has been sparked, and I think I will do it. Maybe not as fast as the world wants me to, but I will do it.
Yeah, when you're ready. When you're ready.
Absolutely. But thank you, Mish. It was great talking to you.
And to you. Bye.
Chat soon.
Bye.